TIFU by accidentally sending my boss a picture of my you-know-what. So here's the thing. I've been working at a pretty big corporate law firm for about 3 years now. I'm in my mid-20s, so when I joined, I was super excited, trying to make a good impression, and basically just overcompensating for being the youngest person on the team. I worked long hours, tried to be helpful, and did everything I could to show that I was reliable, efficient, and, most importantly, professional. I mean, I've got a career to build, right? Everything was going smoothly until about a week ago when I made the most embarrassing mistake of my entire life. It all started with an email I needed to send. We had this huge case with a tight deadline, and I was tasked with sending out some documents to a client. No big deal, right? I'm used to sending emails with attachments. This time, though, I had just gotten a new phone, and I hadn't quite gotten used to the layout and settings. I'd set up my email on it, and I was transferring everything over from my old phone. But here's where the disaster began. Earlier that day, I was working on some other stuff and had to take a quick break to deal with a personal matter. I won't go into the details, but I had just finished up in the bathroom and had to send a quick text to my partner about something. In my rush, I grabbed my phone and clicked into the wrong chat. For context, I have a group chat with some of my friends, and we share, let's just say, adult content with each other. It's nothing too wild, just some memes, funny pictures, and the occasional joke to break the monotony of our professional lives. So, as I'm typing this text to my partner about the groceries or whatever, I accidentally clicked on a picture of a particular nature. You get where I'm going with this, and I didn't even realize it. I know, it was a stupid mistake. I meant to send a quick text, but I ended up clicking the wrong message in my friend's chat, and before I even realized what had happened, the photo was in the email draft. I quickly went to delete it, but because I was in a rush, I clicked the wrong button and attached the picture to the email instead of removing it. At this point, I'm starting to panic, but I figured I could just backtrack, delete the attachment, and send the email as usual. But here's the thing. I was emailing my boss, the senior partner at the law firm, not just any random colleague. The email I was sending contained sensitive case information, along with a few contracts, and it had the wrong attachment. By now, I'm visibly sweating. I'm standing there, staring at the screen, debating whether or not I should just drop everything, leave the office, and never show my face again. My heart is racing as I take a deep breath and try to undo the damage. I'm frantically deleting the attachment and reattaching the right files, but my hands are shaking, and I'm convinced that I've just destroyed my career. In my panic, I click send, and that's when I realized I'd just sent a photo of, well, my junk directly to my boss. I immediately closed my email app and put my phone face down on my desk. I couldn't even look at it for what felt like an eternity. I didn't know what to do. Do I send a follow-up email and pretend like it was an accident? Do I apologize right away? Do I just quit and change my identity and move to another country? In a blind panic, I ran into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror, wondering how I could have been so careless. I looked at my phone again, expecting a message from my boss or some terrible fallout, but nothing. I checked my work email over and over. Still nothing. It was like the worst moment of my life was floating in this suspended, horrifying void. But then, around an hour later, I got an email back from my boss. My heart dropped into my stomach. I opened it up, dreading what I was about to read. It said, "Hey, I noticed an attachment in the email, but it seems like it was sent by mistake. Please resend the documents when you get a chance. Thanks." Just the word mistake made my chest tighten. I started typing out an apology email to explain that I had made a very, very big error and it wasn't intentional, but I stopped myself. What was I even going to say? Sorry, I accidentally sent you a picture of my How do you recover from something like that? I didn't know how to handle it, so I did the only thing that seemed reasonable at the time. I sent a second email to my boss, explaining that I'd sent the wrong attachment, that it was a personal picture, and that it was meant for a different message entirely. I apologized profusely, and I added that I would send the correct documents right away. I also threw in something about how embarrassed I was to make such a mistake and hoped it wouldn't affect my work going forward. To my complete shock, my boss responded with an email that was honestly way too calm. He said, "No worries at all. It happens. Just make sure you double-check next time. Let's get that case wrapped up." I was stunned. I expected him to be furious or at least make a joke at my expense, but instead, he was professional and just moved on. I spent the rest of the day in a state of disbelief, checking my inbox every 5 seconds to see if there were any repercussions. I even considered looking for a new job just in case. The rest of the week was awkward. I didn't get any comments from coworkers or anyone else about the incident, which only added to the weirdness. I couldn't tell if people knew what had happened or if my boss had kept it to himself. It felt like I was walking around in a cloud of shame, pretending everything was fine when inside I was dying. In the end, nothing major came of it. My boss never mentioned it again, and I didn't receive any backlash. I was lucky, but I still cringe every time I think about it. I've been extra careful with my emails ever since. Every time I attach a file, I double and triple check. Am I friends? Let's just say they've been teasing me about it ever since, but I'm grateful they're at least giving me the chance to laugh about it now. But yeah, lesson learned, never, under any circumstances, assume that your phone's email app is foolproof, and definitely never trust yourself to multitask when your brain is in panic mode. And for the love of all things professional, double-check your attachments before you hit send. You never know when your junk might accidentally go to your boss. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. TIFU by accidentally sending a romantic text to my boss instead of my girlfriend, and now I'm stuck in an awkward situation. So, this happened a few days ago, and I'm still cringing every time I think about it. I'm a 26-year-old guy working in a mid-sized tech company, and I've been dating my girlfriend for a little over 2 years. Things are going great in our relationship, but there have been some minor tensions recently because of work, especially since I've been pulling longer hours to keep up with an important project. On the day of this mess-up, I was wrapping up some tasks in the office, and I just received a message from my girlfriend, Emily, around 5:30 p.m. She sent me a sweet text saying, "Hey babe, can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you." 2 hearts. This was exactly what I needed after a long day of meetings and deadlines. I was feeling drained, but her message made me smile and gave me the energy to keep going. I decided to reply to her quickly before finishing up. Here's the thing though, my girlfriend and my boss both have similar names. Emily is my girlfriend, and Emily, let's call her Emily B, is my boss. For context, Emily B is a senior manager at our company and has a very strict professional demeanor. She's competent and smart, but she's also very formal and, to be honest, can come across as a little intimidating at times. My phone had just vibrated again, and I noticed a text from Emily B, my boss. She had sent me a quick work-related message about an issue with one of my reports. It was nothing major, just a request to revise a couple of things for the next team meeting. I went to respond, but just as I tapped on my phone to open the message, my girlfriend texted me again. I could feel the slight panic of not wanting to leave her on read. So I switched over to her thread and began typing my response without thinking too much. Now, I want to point out that I had just finished drafting an extremely heartfelt message for my girlfriend. I was feeling a bit sentimental, and I thought it would be nice to send her something a little more romantic than usual. So, I poured my heart into this message. It read, "I miss you too, babe. You make my days so much better. I can't wait to see you tonight. I love you so much, and I just want to hold you close and never let go. You mean everything to me." It was a sweet, heartfelt message, but here's where things went horribly wrong. As I typed, I was distracted by something happening on my computer screen. My eyes were darting between my phone and the screen, trying to finish up some last-minute tasks. When I hit send on my message, I didn't even realize that I had accidentally sent it to the wrong Emily. I had sent it to my boss, Emily B, instead of my girlfriend, Emily. At first, nothing happened. I figured it was just another work-related message that I had quickly skimmed through. Then, about a minute later, I heard the ding of a notification from my phone. My stomach dropped when I saw the message preview on the lock screen. "I love you so much, and I just want to hold you close and never let go." I froze. My heart raced as I quickly opened the message and realized what I had done. I had sent a deeply romantic message to my boss, the very woman who had the power to affect my career in any way she saw fit. I didn't know what to do, so I panicked and went into full-blown crisis mode. For a few seconds, I considered just pretending it never happened, deleting the message and hoping it would just get lost in the void of her phone. But then I realized that was a terrible idea. I needed to address it head-on before this became the most awkward situation of my life. I quickly typed a follow-up message, something that could save me from total embarrassment. Here's what I wrote. I am so sorry. That was meant for someone else. I got mixed up between two messages. I apologize for any confusion. My hands were shaking as I hit send. The read receipt popped up immediately, and I watched, horrified, as the little double check marks turned blue. I waited for her response. The next few moments felt like they lasted hours. My mind was racing. Was she going to fire me? Was this going to be something I'd never live down at the company? Would I have to change jobs? The potential consequences played out in my mind like an avalanche of worst-case scenarios. And then, finally, my phone buzzed again. It was a response from Emily B. My palms were sweaty as I opened it. Is everything okay? She wrote. I'm not sure what this message is about. Let me know if you need to talk about it. It wasn't exactly what I had hoped for. It was polite, but it was also clear that she had no idea what was going on. I had no choice but to try to clarify. I typed back, it's really embarrassing, but I was sending that message to my girlfriend. I apologize again for the mix-up. The minutes ticked by as I awaited her reply, my mind still spinning in circles. And then, finally, I saw the 3 little dots pop up on my screen as she started typing a response. This was it, the moment that would define my career. Her reply, got it. No problem. Just wanted to check in. I understand the confusion. If you need to talk about anything, let me know. And by the way, no one has ever sent me a message like that before. I'll admit, it was a bit flattering. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Flattering? I was mortified. She had just casually brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal. I quickly apologized again, assuring her that I would never make that mistake again. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about how bizarre the situation had become. As the days went by, I kept getting little reminders of that awful moment. Whenever Emily B. walked by my desk, I felt like she knew something I didn't, like there was a giant, unspoken secret between us. Whenever she replied to my emails, I couldn't help but feel like she was judging me for the overly sentimental message I'd sent her. But so far, nothing more had been said about it, and work continued as usual. Emily, my girlfriend, found out about the mix-up a day later. She had been a little concerned when she saw my response to her earlier text, but after explaining what happened, she laughed it off. Well, I guess that's one way to impress your boss, she teased. I don't know if that's the advice I'd give to anyone, but in hindsight, I'm just glad that Emily B. wasn't completely freaked out. I'm also thankful she wasn't too offended and that my relationship with my girlfriend is still intact. But from now on, I double-check who I'm texting before hitting send. It's not a mistake I plan on repeating. TIFU by accidentally setting off my entire building's fire alarm and causing chaos at work. So, I work in a medium-sized office building that's about 12 stories tall, located in a bustling part of the city. We've got a variety of businesses and tenants in the building, and it's generally pretty quiet unless you count the occasional elevator malfunction or people running late for meetings. It's an old building, so it's got a few quirks. The heating system's ancient, the elevators are slower than molasses, and the fire alarms? They're a mystery to everyone. I should mention that I'm pretty new to the job. I've been working there for about 6 months now, and while I've mostly got the hang of things, there's still a lot of little things I don't know. One of those things happens to be the fire alarm system. Apparently, no one really understands how it works. It's a bit of a figure-it-out-as-you-go kind of situation. You know, the type of place where everyone just assumes it won't happen to them, so no one pays much attention to the actual fire safety protocols. Big mistake. So, on to the story. This all happened last Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk, getting through my to-do list, when I noticed that my feet were cold. The building has this very inconsistent heating system, and it was one of those days where it felt like the air conditioning was on, even though it was about 40 degrees outside. I looked around for the space heater I keep under my desk for just such an occasion, but I couldn't find it. I asked my coworker across the aisle, Jeff, if he had seen it, and he said he hadn't. I was frustrated because I rely on that little heater to survive the office's weird climate, but I tried to just focus on work. After a while, though, the cold started to really get to me, and I decided I was going to do something about it. I could either freeze all day or try to fix the situation, and I chose the latter. I've seen the building maintenance guy, Bob, make small adjustments to the thermostat in the lobby before, so I figured I'd go downstairs and ask him to tweak it a little. Now, here's where I made my first mistake. The building has the security panel near the front entrance where you enter your key card, and if you have any maintenance requests or need to access the building after hours, you can type a code in there and request assistance. I'd seen people use it before, so I thought it was the same thing as the ones you find in hotels. You know, those control panels that adjust the heat and air conditioning in each unit? So, without thinking much about it, I headed to the security panel and punched in the code I saw Bob use once. It worked. The little light turned green, and a menu popped up. It asked me to select the floor I was on, and I selected 12, the floor my office is on. The next option was thermostat adjustment. I thought perfect. It gave me a little slider to adjust the temperature, so I turned it up a little. Honestly, I felt pretty proud of myself. I had solved my cold feet problem. However, just as I was about to head back up to my desk, I realized that there was a fire alarm option in the menu. I don't know why I thought this was necessary, but I figured since I was already messing with the system, I might as well check it out. Maybe the system had something to do with smoke detection or an emergency button in case of fire. I'm not sure what went through my head, but I clicked it. The next thing I knew, I heard a loud, shrill beep, beep, beep. My heart immediately dropped into my stomach. It wasn't the pleasant sound of a cooling fan or an air conditioner kicking on. It was the unmistakable sound of fire alarm. Not just one fire alarm, mind you, but the entire building's fire alarm system, which was now blaring at full volume. I froze. My hands went clammy, and I started to panic. I didn't know what to do. I immediately realized what had happened. I had accidentally triggered the building-wide fire alarm system while trying to adjust the thermostat. I looked around to see if anyone else noticed, but of course, the sound was so loud that everyone did. Within seconds, the entire office building started to stir. People started coming out of their offices, confused and annoyed, as the alarm continued to wail. Some people started walking toward the elevators to leave, while others were standing in the hallways, trying to figure out if this was some kind of test or if something was actually burning. At this point, I was in full-on panic mode. I knew I had to fix this. I couldn't just stand there while the entire building was evacuated because of my mistake. I dashed back to the security panel, thinking I could somehow reverse what I had done, but it didn't give me an option to turn the alarm off. I desperately tried pressing different buttons, hoping something would work, but nothing did. The sound kept getting louder, and now, other tenants in the building were starting to leave their offices and gather near the exits, grumbling about missing meetings and appointments. I could hear someone from a few floors down shouting, "Is it a drill?" But I knew it wasn't. This wasn't a drill. This was me causing the whole thing. I finally ran back to my office and grabbed my phone, quickly dialing the building's maintenance line. Bob, the guy who normally handles these things, picked up the phone, and I frantically explained the situation. He didn't seem as frantic as I was, which was a bit calming, but he said something that just made me feel worse. "Well, it's your fault, isn't it? You don't just go messing with the panel like that without knowing what you're doing." "Yeah, thanks, Bob. That's not exactly what I needed to hear right now." It turns out, Bob had to come down and manually reset the fire alarm system. He explained that the building's fire alarm is tied into the HVAC system in a way that made it almost impossible to turn off remotely. As a result, I had caused a full-scale evacuation, complete with fire trucks showing up on the street outside the building. By the time Bob got things sorted out and the alarm was finally turned off, almost an hour had passed. Everyone had already been evacuated, and the street outside the building was a mess. People were standing around, annoyed, cold, and looking for answers. Meanwhile, I was just trying to blend in and not make eye contact with anyone, praying no one would remember my face or figure out I was the one who had triggered the entire debacle. It took a full hour for everyone to be allowed back inside, and by then, most of the workday was shot. Not to mention, I received a pretty embarrassing email from building management the next day, reminding everyone to follow fire safety protocols and avoid tampering with the alarm systems. I will never live this down. Now, every time the fire alarm goes off in the building, I cringe a little just waiting for someone to point a finger at me. TLDR, accidentally triggered the fire alarm system in my office building while trying to adjust the thermostat, causing a full evacuation and an embarrassing hour-long delay for everyone. TIFU by accidentally ruining my best friend's wedding with a drunken speech. So, I, 28M, recently made a huge mistake at my best friend's wedding. I feel like I'll never live this down, and I'm trying to figure out how to fix it, but I'm not sure if I can. Here's what happened. I've known Sam, 29M, since we were kids. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, and have been through just about everything together. When Sam asked me to be his best man at his wedding to his amazing fiancée, Lauren, 27F, I was honored. It was a big deal, and I knew this was the kind of moment I had to get right. I spent weeks planning a speech I hoped would be heartfelt, meaningful, and just the right mix of funny and sincere. I didn't want to mess it up. The day of the wedding, everything was going perfectly. The ceremony was beautiful, and Lauren looked stunning. Sam was beaming, genuinely happy. But, as you may already know, weddings tend to get a little chaotic behind the scenes, especially with a best man who's known to have a bit of a drinking problem. I've always been the life of the party, and I love having a good time. My friends know me as the guy who can make anyone laugh, and I tend to get a little too comfortable when it comes to drinking. It's not that I'm an alcoholic or anything. I can hold my liquor well, but sometimes when I'm nervous or excited, I overdo it. And I was definitely nervous about the speech, so I ended up drinking more than I should have. The reception was in full swing, and the drinks were flowing. I'd had a few too many cocktails before it was my time to give my speech, but I felt fine. A little buzz, but nothing that would make me act out of control, or so I thought. When they called me up to give my speech, I stood up a little too quickly, and the room spun for a second. I steadied myself on the podium and grabbed the mic. At this point, I knew I was tipsy, but I figured I could power through. After all, I've given speeches before, and I've always been able to keep it together. I started off fine, reminiscing about Sam and I's childhood and the crazy adventures we've been on together. I cracked a couple of jokes, and people laughed. It was going well. But then, I made the mistake of glancing at the open bar. That was when I realized I hadn't had a drink in a while, and my brain, in its drunken wisdom, decided that I needed another. So, I made a comment about how the bartender was looking at me with judgmental eyes, and I started to make a joke about the drinks. For some reason, I thought it would be hilarious to turn my speech into an impromptu stand-up comedy set. I started to tell stories about Sam's past relationships. And I don't mean the funny, lighthearted stuff. No, I went deep. I told the story of how Sam once got dumped by his high school girlfriend over a text while he was in the hospital after spraining his ankle playing basketball. I described it in way too much detail, laughing about how she called him pathetic and a loser. I think I was trying to be self-deprecating or something, but it just came off as crass. Sam was sitting at the table with Lauren and his family, and I could see his face turning red. I didn't understand why at first, until I realized that I had just told a room full of people about one of the most embarrassing moments of his life. His parents looked uncomfortable, and Lauren looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. But somehow I kept going. At this point, I was totally tipsy, and my filter had gone out the window. I launched into another story, this time about Sam's bachelor party. Now, I should have known better than to mention this, but the alcohol clouded my judgment. I started recounting how Sam had gotten ridiculously drunk and had tried to convince a complete stranger at the bar that he was a secret agent working for the government. He was so convinced of this that he tried to prove it by showing the guy his top secret phone, which, of course, wasn't even unlocked. I told the whole story with dramatic gestures, and while the crowd was chuckling, I could see that Sam was silently pleading with me to stop. But I didn't stop. Instead, I want to talk about how Sam was always the one to make the worst decisions after a few drinks. I told the entire crowd about how he once called his ex-girlfriend the night before his wedding to Lauren to get closure. This wasn't something he'd told anyone, not even Lauren, but in my drunk state, I thought it would be a funny story. I went into detail about the awkward conversation they had, how he nearly ruined his engagement, and how Lauren was upset when she found out about it. I'm not sure why I thought this was funny, but I was laughing, and the crowd was laughing too. At this point, Sam stood up, looking like he was about to explode. He mumbled something about needing to go to the bathroom, but it was clear that he was furious with me. I didn't care. I thought it was still all in good fun. I had no idea how badly I was crossing the line. But then the silence hit. I looked around the room and noticed that no one was laughing anymore. In fact, they were all looking at me like I just slapped a puppy. Lauren's face was pale, her eyes wide. Sam had disappeared, and his parents were staring at me like they wanted to strangle me. I suddenly realized that I'd gone too far. I'd told the kind of stories that should never have been told in public, let alone at a wedding. I had made Sam's most personal, embarrassing moments the centerpiece of my speech, and I had ruined what should have been a beautiful moment for him and Lauren. I stumbled through a quick apology, but it was clear that the damage had been done. The rest of the evening was awkward. Sam and Lauren barely spoke to me, and when I tried to approach them later to apologize, Sam told me to get lost in the most hurtful way possible. I haven't heard from him since. The worst part is that I ruined one of the happiest days of his life. I don't know how to make it right, and I feel terrible. I've apologized multiple times, but it seems like he can't forgive me. His family has been cold to me, and I can tell that Lauren is upset, too. To make matters worse, my other friends are starting to distance themselves from me, saying I was too much and that I should have known better. I agree. I really should have known better. But in that moment, with the alcohol and the nerves, I just lost control. I ruined my best friend's wedding. I don't know if I can fix this, and I'm scared I've lost my best friend for good. So yeah, that's how I ruined my best friend's wedding. I feel like a complete idiot. TIFU by accidentally causing a panic at a wedding. So a bit of background. I, 29M, was invited to my cousin's wedding last weekend. I'm not exactly close with the bride and groom, but we're family, so I got the invite. I decided to go, figuring I'd hang out with some relatives I hadn't seen in a while and, just enjoy a free meal and drinks. The wedding was being held at this beautiful but somewhat secluded vineyard. I was already a little stressed because it was a long drive and I wasn't sure how I was going to fit in, but I figured it would be a nice, chill event. The wedding itself was gorgeous. The ceremony was outdoors under a big oak tree with all these fairy lights and flowers, and the reception was in a massive hall overlooking the vineyard. Everyone seemed to be in a great mood, and the bride looked stunning in her dress. And I swear, there was a moment where I thought she was about to cry while walking down the aisle. Anyway, it was all very touching, and I was trying my best not to look too out of place. The reception was a different story, though. They were serving food, drinks, and everyone was mingling around. I grabbed a drink and some hors d'oeuvres and went to find a seat at one of the long tables. The family dynamic, as you can imagine, was a bit tense. The bride side of the family was kind of standoffish, and my side was just loud and boisterous. It didn't help that I didn't know anyone on the bride side except for my cousin, so I'm mostly just stuck to my phone, trying to stay out of awkward conversations. Now, here's where things started to go wrong. About 2 hours into the reception, I felt the need to use the bathroom. I wasn't familiar with the venue, so I asked one of the staff where the restroom was. They directed me to the back of the building, through a narrow hallway, and then down a flight of stairs. I did as they said and walked to the bottom, expecting to see a typical public restroom. Instead, I found myself in a small, dimly lit storage room. There was a mop bucket, a few crates of unused wine glasses, and a few random boxes stacked in the corner. I froze for a second. There was a bathroom sign near the stairs, but I didn't see anything that resembled a bathroom here. I figured maybe I was just in the wrong spot, so I turned around to head back up the stairs. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard a voice calling my name. "Hey, are you okay down there?" It was my cousin, the groom, standing at the top of the stairs with a concerned look on his face. I was a little confused and said, yeah, I was just looking for the bathroom, but I think I ended up in some storage closet or something." Without missing a beat, he says, "Oh no, that's the emergency exit. You definitely shouldn't be down there." That's when it clicked. The room I'd just been standing in wasn't a bathroom. It was a part of the emergency exit route. I'd wandered into a restricted area. But here's where things took a turn for the worse. Apparently, The venue was set up with a security system that included automatic alarms tied to certain doors, particularly those leading to emergency exits. The reason no one had stopped me earlier was that I'd used a door that didn't trigger the alarm at first, but once I stepped back into the hallway, it set off the system. The next thing I knew, the entire building's alarm system was blaring. I didn't understand what was happening at first, but the sound was deafening. I was frozen in place, my heart racing. Everyone at the reception started looking around, panicked, unsure of what was going on. The bride's family, who were already on edge, looked like they were ready to bolt. It was chaos. People started running toward the exits, and some even dropped their drinks, screaming for the nearest exits. The staff started ushering people toward the doors, trying to calm them down and direct them out of the building. Some guests were trying to pull others along, and I honestly didn't know what to do, so I just stood there completely mortified, not even knowing how to explain what had happened. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the alarm stopped. The staff and security were trying to get things under control, and they immediately ran over to me. One of the staff members, clearly irritated, asked if I had triggered the alarm. My cousin, who had already apologized profusely, was standing there too, trying to smooth things over. But the damage was done. Everyone was visibly rattled, and the party atmosphere had completely evaporated. The bride, bless her heart, looked like she was about to have a meltdown. She came over and asked what happened, and I tried to explain, but I'm pretty sure I sounded completely incoherent. At this point, I could tell the entire reception was on edge, and some of the guests were even talking about leaving early. My cousin tried to salvage the situation by getting everyone to calm down, but it was clear that the mood had been destroyed. The wine was flowing less freely, the music was quieter, and people were still eyeing the exit like they were ready to bolt at any second. The remainder of the night was a quiet, awkward affair. As I tried to leave later, a few of the other guests whispered as I walked by. I could hear someone joking about the panic alarm, and I overheard someone else saying, "Well, at least the groom knows how to make an entrance." I didn't really know what to say to that, so I just kept my head down and headed out. I spent the entire drive home replaying the events in my mind, cringing with each passing minute. I'm pretty sure I'll be the subject of family jokes for the next decade. At the end of the day, I just wanted to enjoy a quiet wedding, but instead, I somehow managed to turn it into a scene straight out of a disaster movie. So, yeah, TIFU by accidentally causing a panic at my cousin's wedding. I'm now banned from ever touching a door that says emergency exit again. TIFU by trying to impress my friends with a homemade haunted house, but it went horribly wrong. So, I recently made one of the most idiotic decisions of my life. I've always been the type of person who tries to go above and beyond for the sake of entertaining others. When Halloween came around, I thought, why not create a homemade haunted house for my friends? It'll be a blast, and they'll definitely be impressed. Spoiler alert, I was wrong, and it all went downhill in the most spectacularly embarrassing way possible. To give you a bit of background, I'm not exactly the handiest person. I'm more of the I'll watch a YouTube tutorial, then do it myself, and mess it up kind of guy. But for some reason, I thought this haunted house idea would be my big break. I can already picture my friends' faces when they walk through the doors. Amazed, stunned, maybe even a little scared. I was ready to make this Halloween unforgettable. I started planning in early October. I watched countless DIY haunted house videos on YouTube, bought a bunch of cheap decorations, and started brainstorming how I could go all out with the scares. I even considered incorporating elements from classic haunted house themes, a creepy graveyard, a dark maze, and a room that would give people the chills. My first mistake was thinking I could do everything myself. I'm not an expert in creating illusions or special effects, but I figured if I threw enough fake cobwebs and fog machines in there, I could pull it off. So I went to the dollar store, Home Depot, and every other place I could find and bought all the essentials. I had a fog machine, fake skeletons, creepy dolls, cobwebs, lights that flickered on and off, and of course a fog-filled cauldron in the corner. The works. I decided to use my basement as the venue. The space was big enough, and I thought the dark, musty vibe would add to the creepiness. I covered every inch of the walls with black cloths and made makeshift rooms with curtains, trying to divide the basement into different scenes. I even spent way too much money on a sound system, so I could blast eerie sound effects in the background. If there's one thing I learned about haunted houses, it's that ambience is everything. My second mistake was choosing to create a scary actor role. I had this genius idea that I would dress up as a creepy old man and jump out at the guests from behind one of the rooms. The plan was simple. I'd scare them and then retreat back into the shadows, letting them think it was all part of the show. I spent hours crafting a horrific old man mask and perfecting my hunchback shuffle. I even practiced my creepy laugh in front of the mirror a few times, getting into character. Now, this is where things started to go south. The day of the event, I was incredibly confident. I had everything set up, the decorations were in place, and I even had a few friends helping me out. The basement was completely transformed, and the atmosphere felt genuinely eerie. I was proud of myself. I had really outdone my expectations. But as I started to realize later on, I had missed some crucial details. The fog machine, for instance, was a bit too powerful. It quickly filled the entire basement, making it difficult for anyone to see more than a few feet in front of them. And the sound system? Well, it was blasting a mixture of chains rattling and distant screams, which I thought would be terrifying, but it just ended up giving everyone a headache. So, there I was, standing backstage in my creepy old man costume, ready to begin the first round of guests. The first group of friends arrived. I could hear their excited chatter from upstairs as they made their way down into the basement. The fog enveloped them as soon as they entered, and I could tell they were already a little disoriented. I waited behind a curtain, trying to keep my breathing steady, ready to make my dramatic entrance. I timed everything perfectly. The moment they passed the graveyard scene, I'd jump out at them. It was going to be a scream-worthy moment, but I didn't factor in how claustrophobic the space would be. As soon as they started walking through the basement, the fog got thick and made it hard to move around. One of my friends bumped into a fake skeleton, causing it to fall over with a loud crash. That set the tone for the entire experience. Instead of screams of terror, I heard nervous laughter and awkward shuffling. But I didn't give up. I waited, poised, ready for my moment. Finally, they reached the graveyard scene. I could hear their voices getting closer. This was it. I popped out from behind a curtain, pulling off the creepy old man shtick. I shuffled toward them, letting out my best creepy laugh. And nothing. No screams, no gasps. They just stared at me. One friend even asked, "Is that supposed to be you, Alex?" Another friend giggled, clearly uncomfortable. But I was in too deep to stop now. I continued my act, making random, creepy noises, hoping to invoke a reaction. The group was no longer interested in the haunted house. They were more focused on how awkward I was making them feel. They slowly, almost cautiously, made their way through the basement, looking at me with forced smiles. When they reached the end of the tour, they gave me some half-hearted praise, but the vibe was all wrong. I had created the haunted house equivalent of a bad first date. Undeterred, I tried again with the next group. But this time, things got even worse. As I was waiting to jump out at them, I noticed that the fog machine had overfilled the basement to the point where I couldn't even see the front of the room. I tried moving through the haze, but my vision was so blurred I walked straight into a shelf of decorations, knocking over an entire wall of fake pumpkins. The next group heard the crash and immediately started to laugh. But it wasn't the terrified laughter I was hoping for. It was full-on hysterical laughter. One friend shouted, "Dude, what the hell is going on?" Another started asking if I was okay. It wasn't just the fog either. The whole thing was a mess. The sound system wasn't even working right, and I had a few guests complaining that it was too loud. The creepy old man costume that I thought was so clever started to make me feel ridiculous, especially when one of my friends tried to take a picture with me and call me the world's weirdest grandpa. At that point, I was mortified. I couldn't salvage it. By the time the final group came through, the whole haunted house had turned into a comedy show. Instead of being terrified, they were all just trying to figure out what went wrong. They were trying to comfort me, telling me it was still fun, but I could tell they were secretly planning to leave early and go to a real haunted house. In the end, I ended up dismantling the whole thing. The fog machine had given me a headache, my friends were no longer scared, and I couldn't even look at my old man costume without cringing. I had spent weeks planning for a spooky, terrifying night, and instead, I created what could only be described as a Halloween nightmare, just not the good kind. My friends and I ended up hanging out in the living room, watching Halloween movies and pretending the haunted house had never happened. Lesson learned. Next year, I'm just buying a bunch of candy and calling it a day. TIFU by accidentally ghosting my best friend of 15 years and almost ruining our friendship forever. So, this happened about a week ago, and I still can't get over how much an idiot I was. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly happened, but let me take you through the whole chain of events, which honestly feels like a sitcom in real life. First, a bit of backstory. I, 26M, have a best friend. Let's call him Greg, 26M. We've known each other since middle school, and over the years, we've been pretty much inseparable. Same high school, same college, same city post-graduation. If something was going on in my life, Greg knew about it, and vice versa. We always made time for each other, even if it was just a quick phone call or a random hangout after work. Our friendship was, in my eyes, rock solid. But that's where I messed up. It all started innocently enough a few weeks ago when I was juggling work, a new relationship, and the chaos of adult life. Greg had been going through some stuff, nothing too serious, just the usual challenges that come with being in your mid-20s, feeling uncertain about career choices, maybe a little lonely in terms of relationships, that sort of thing. Being the supportive friend I am, I made sure to check in on him, asking how he was doing whenever I could. But one evening, after a long, exhausting day at work, I found myself face down on the couch, glued to my phone. I had just finished an intense 12-hour shift at the office, and the last thing I wanted to do was interact with people. But Greg had sent me a text earlier in the day, and I'd seen the notification when I was about to collapse on the couch. It wasn't a long message, just a, "Hey, what's up? I feel like we haven't hung out in a while. Want to catch up soon?" I remember seeing it and thinking, yeah, I'll reply in a bit. But my eyes were heavy and my brain was fried. Fast forward 2 days, and I still hadn't responded. I knew I was being a bit of a jerk about it, but honestly, I figured I'd reply tomorrow. It wasn't a big deal, right? We had a long history together. Surely, a couple of days without a response wouldn't cause any issues. Well, 2 days turned into 3, then 4, then an entire week. My excuse? I was just swamped with work, trying to get things together with my new girlfriend, and let's be honest, I didn't make the effort to carve out time for one of the most important people in my life. In the meantime, I started receiving more texts from Greg. At first, it was just a couple of follow-ups like, "Hey, you alive?" and "Let me know when you have a minute to chat." Then, it got a little more pointed. "Bro, what's up? You're really not responding anymore." I began to get this pit in my stomach. Every time I saw one of Greg's messages, I felt guilty, but instead of just responding and owning up to it, I would procrastinate. I didn't want to feel like a terrible friend, so I kept telling myself I'd just respond when I had the emotional bandwidth for it. But as the days went by, the longer I ignored him, the harder it felt to face the situation. This all came to a head last Friday night. I was out with my girlfriend at a bar, having a great time, and Greg texted again. This time, it was short and blunt. "Are you avoiding me?" It stung, and I knew then that I couldn't keep ignoring this. So, I decided I would message him the next day and apologize, maybe try to make plans to hang out. But of course, life had other plans. The next day, I woke up feeling miserable from the night before and spent the entire day in bed. The hangover was brutal, and I couldn't muster up the energy to do much more than scroll through social media. I had completely forgotten about responding to Greg's message until I saw that he'd posted something on Instagram. It was a picture of him and his dog at a park, but what stood out to me was the caption. "Some people just disappear when life gets tough." I guess that's how it goes sometimes. I could feel my heart sinking into my stomach as I stared at the post. This was a direct shot at me, and I knew it. Greg was hurt, and I had absolutely done this to him. It felt like a punch in the gut, because deep down, I knew I had abandoned him, even though I never meant to. The worst part? He wasn't even angry with me. He was just genuinely sad, and I couldn't blame him for it. So, I texted him immediately, trying to explain myself. But instead of being smooth and heartfelt, my message came across as clumsy and defensive. I wrote something along the lines of, "Hey man, I'm really sorry. It wasn't intentional. I've just been caught up in life, and I didn't mean to make you feel like I was ignoring you. I promise I'll be better about responding. It wasn't even 2 minutes later that Greg replied, but the message hit me like a ton of bricks. I get it, I guess. But I don't know what I did to deserve being treated like this. You've been MIA for over a week, and I don't even know why. It hurts. That response was like a slap in the face. I had hurt my best friend of 15 years, and I couldn't undo it with a single text. The worst part? Greg didn't really know what had been going on in my life. I hadn't been honest with him about how overwhelmed I was, and I had taken for granted that he'd just understand. I tried to call him right away, hoping a conversation could clear things up. He didn't pick up, and I left a voicemail, apologizing profusely. A few hours later, I got a text from Greg. I just need some time. Let's talk later. That was the hardest thing to read. Not because he was asking for space, but because I knew he was right. He needed time to process what I had done to him, and I had to respect that. I had failed as a friend, and now it was on me to fix it, even though I couldn't fix the hurt I had caused immediately. The next few days were agonizing. I was a wreck, constantly thinking about how I could repair the damage. I texted Greg a few more times, trying to be patient and giving him the space he asked for. Finally, about 4 days later, he called me. We talked things through, and I won't lie, it was one of the most difficult conversations I've ever had. But at the end of it, he forgave me. We agreed that we'd work on being better at staying connected, even when life gets hectic. I know this sounds like a stupid thing to mess up, and it was, but I almost lost one of the most important relationships in my life because I got too caught up in my own head and couldn't take 5 minutes to respond to a simple text. If you got a friend you care about, don't take them for granted, because it only takes a small mistake to make them feel like they're not important anymore. Moral of the story? Don't let your life get so chaotic that you forget the people who are there for you. They deserve more than being left on read. TIFU by accidentally causing a massive family feud at my wedding because I tried to save money on the seating arrangements. I'm still recovering from the disaster that was my wedding. I thought I had everything under control, but it turns out I completely underestimated how much a tiny mistake could derail a whole event. This is my story about how I, a seemingly reasonable person, turned my dream wedding into a battlefield of family drama. It all started a year ago when my now wife and I began planning our wedding. We had a modest budget, but wanted to have a beautiful celebration with family and friends. One of the first things we tackled was the venue. We decided on a nice, moderately priced location, and it was perfect for our needs. The next big decision was seating arrangements. We wanted to make sure everyone was comfortable, but after seeing the price tag for professional seating charts, I decided to handle it myself. I'm not the most organized person in the world, but I thought this would be easy. Big mistake. I had heard that one of the best ways to keep the peace during a wedding reception was to carefully plan the seating so that no one felt left out or uncomfortable. So, I took the advice of a few people who said I could mix family members without any issues. I figured it would be best to group people based on family ties and relationships, but also keep some distant relatives and friends from sitting next to each other to avoid any drama. I mean, how bad could it be, right? Well, there was one small problem I didn't take into account: my mom and her sister. They've never gotten along, and by never, I mean never. They've been feuding for years over something that happened when they were kids. It's been a constant source of tension in the family. Everyone knows about it, and everyone has tried to stay out of it. But I should have realized that a wedding might not be the best time to make everyone get along. I started my seating chart with the basics: close family in the front, distant relatives towards the back. But then, it hit me. I had to decide where to put my mom and aunt. Since they can't be near each other without making a scene, I thought it would be best to sit them on opposite ends of the hall. This way, they wouldn't have to interact at all. Simple enough, right? The mistake came when I, in a moment of overconfidence, decided to seat my mom at the same table as my dad's side of the family. These are people who have never really gotten along with my mom. My dad and mom's divorce was a messy one, and though it happened years ago, there's still some lingering tensions. I also thought it'd be a good idea to seat my aunt with her husband, who had some serious beef with my mom. I was trying to avoid them even interacting, but that didn't really work out. This whole seating arrangement was my way of balancing things out, but in hindsight, I was setting up an emotional time bomb. The big day came, and everything was going well at first. The ceremony was beautiful, and the reception was buzzing with excitement. The food was great, the music was perfect, and people were enjoying themselves. But as soon as the guests sat down to eat, the problem started. It was about 20 minutes into the reception when I noticed my mom and dad were having an intense conversation. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, they're adults, right? They're both remarried. They've been divorced for over 10 years, and I figured they could keep it civil for one night. But then, things started escalating. My mom's face turned bright red, and I could tell she was getting upset. I watched as she stood up abruptly, knocking her chair over, and marched over to my aunt, who was seated on the opposite side of the room. I froze. I knew this was going to go badly, but I had no idea how badly. As soon as my mom reached my aunt's table, all hell broke loose. My mom started yelling at my aunt for not showing enough respect to her at the wedding. Apparently, the tension between them had been building for weeks, and the seating arrangement was the final straw. My aunt, in turn, started shouting back, accusing my mom of trying to ruin everything and making the whole day about herself. At that point, I could see my dad and his brothers getting involved, trying to calm things down, but instead, they made it worse by adding their own comments to the fight. Meanwhile, my new wife was staring at me with wide eyes, silently asking, "What the hell is going on?" I had no idea. I just sat there, dumbfounded, as the argument escalated into a full-blown shouting match. The entire reception had come to a standstill. Guests were staring, unsure of whether to intervene or just pretend they didn't see the drama unfolding before them. I don't know how long it lasted, but it felt like an eternity. Eventually, the wedding planner came over and suggested we move the confrontation into a private room. At this point, my wife, looking like she was about to cry, turned to me and asked if I could fix this. I told her I'd try, but deep down, I knew there was no easy way to resolve what I had just set in motion. I ran over to my mom and aunt, hoping to defuse the situation, but only made things worse. As soon as I tried to speak, they both turned on me. My mom accused me of favoring my dad's side by putting her at a table with people who hated her, and my aunt accused me of betraying her by seating her away from everyone else. The more I tried to explain myself, the angrier they got. I felt like I was losing control of the situation fast, and my wife was not too pleased with me at this point. She gave me a look that clearly said, "You better fix this or we're done." After what seemed like an eternity of back and forth arguing, I finally managed to calm things down enough for people to return to their seats. The reception was never the same after that. People kept shooting glances at each other, whispering about the drama, and there was just an awkward tension in the air for the rest of the night. Looking back, I realized just how much I messed up by thinking I could handle the seating chart on my own. What I thought was a harmless decision turned out to be the catalyst for the worst family feud I'd ever witnessed. I should have either hired a professional to help or at least consulted a family mediator before making those seating choices. Instead, I tried to save a few bucks, and it cost me more than I could have imagined. The aftermath of the wedding was tough. My mom and aunt didn't speak to each other for months. There were multiple family gatherings where people just didn't show up because they were afraid of another fight breaking out. My wife and I had to do a lot of damage control, and it wasn't easy. Our marriage almost got off to a rocky start because of my poor decision-making. So, yeah, TIFU by thinking I could save money on seating arrangements and ended up causing a massive family feud at my own wedding. Let's just say I'm never going to handle the guest list at a family event again, and I'm definitely hiring professionals next time. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. TIFU by accidentally inviting my ex to my wedding. I never thought that planning my wedding would be this complicated. Sure, I knew there'd be the typical stress of finding the perfect venue, figuring out the catering, deciding on the guest list, and all that jazz. But I didn't anticipate the bombshell that would be dropped just a few days before the big day, sending my carefully curated life into an uncontrollable spiral. So, here's the backstory. I met my fiancée, Jenna, 3 years ago. We clicked instantly, and spent every moment we could together. We both come from relatively small towns, so it didn't take long before we began talking about marriage. After about a year of dating, we were already discussing rings and venues, and that's when we decided to take the plunge and start planning. Jenna's family is absolutely wonderful. They've treated me like one of their own ever since the first time I came over for dinner. My family is, well, let's say they're a bit more complicated. My mom is a little overbearing and has a tendency to try and fix my life in her own way, which she's done since I was a teenager. She wanted to plan every single detail of the wedding, down to the color of the napkins, but Jenna and I quickly shut that down. We decided to go with a small, intimate wedding. Just close friends and family, no extravagant guest lists. Jenna's parents were on board with this idea, and it was clear they didn't want anything over the top either. My mom, though, she was still not entirely thrilled, but she respected our decision for the most part and didn't push too hard. Now, here comes the tricky part. I used to be married. It was a short marriage, but it was a disaster from the start. I met my ex, Kelly, in college. We dated for about 2 years before we rushed into marriage because we thought we were supposed to. That marriage was a train wreck. We had different values, different life goals, and we didn't communicate well. We split up after only a year and a half, but it was a messy separation, and things ended on really bad terms. When the divorce was final, I cut off all communication with Kelly. I blocked her on all social media platforms, changed my number, and made it clear to all mutual friends that I didn't want anything to do with her. In my mind, I had completely closed that chapter of my life. I was moving on with Jenna, and I wanted to leave the past behind me. A few months ago, I was planning my wedding and making the guest list when I realized that I had forgotten to reach out to a few people who might need an invitation. Some of my childhood friends were overseas, so I didn't think they'd be able to make it. I was trying to keep the list small, but I thought it would be nice to send out an invitation to some distant relatives who hadn't been in my life for a while. I had an old family contact list from my mom, and I was going through it to make sure I didn't forget anyone important. One name caught my eye on the list, Kelly. My heart skipped a beat as I saw her name on the invite list. It hadn't even crossed my mind that I might need to consider inviting her, but for some reason, I thought that I should. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe I thought it would be the mature thing to do. After all, we were both adults now, and I didn't want bad blood hanging over everything. I never even considered the possibility that inviting her might not be a good idea, let alone a disastrous one. I found her address on the list, wrote her a polite, formal invitation, and popped it in the mail. At the time, I told myself I was doing the right thing. I was being civil and adult about the whole situation. I thought Jenna would understand. She had never met Kelly, but she knew about my past, and I assumed she would appreciate the gesture. Fast forward to the week before the wedding. Jenna and I were working on last-minute details, confirming everything with the caterer, the photographer, and the venue. We were both feeling a little stressed, but we were still incredibly excited. It was going to be our perfect day. We hadn't even thought about the guest list for a while since we had everything in place. Then, one day, while we were having dinner at my parents' house, I checked my phone to find a message from an unknown number. It was a simple text that said, "Looking forward to seeing you at your wedding." I was confused. I hadn't invited anyone else, or at least I didn't think I had. I opened the message, and I was hit with a cold wave of realization. It was Kelly. She had received the invitation I sent and was responding enthusiastically. I immediately felt sick to my stomach. I turned to Jenna, who had a confused look on her face. "Who's texting you?" she asked. It's Kelly," I said, my voice faltering. Jenna froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Kelly? Your ex?" I nodded slowly, unable to meet her eyes. She put her fork down and stared at me, her expression changing from confusion to disbelief. "Why on earth would you invite her?" she demanded. "After everything she put you through, after everything that happened, why would you invite her to our wedding?" I felt like an idiot. I had no answer. I had thought it would be a nice gesture, a way to show maturity, but it clearly wasn't the right decision. Jenna didn't speak for a few moments, her anger simmering. I could tell she was hurt. I had made an incredibly thoughtless decision, and I didn't know how to undo it. I tried to apologize, but the damage was done. Jenna was upset, and I knew I had crossed the line. I immediately called Kelly and told her that there had been a mistake. I explained that I had invited her by accident, and I begged her not to come. She was confused at first, but after I told her how much it meant to me that she not attend, she reluctantly agreed. The real trouble came the next day when Jenna's best friend, who was helping with the wedding planning, found out about what had happened. Word spread quickly, and before I knew it, the whole situation had escalated into a full-blown crisis. Jenna wasn't just upset with me. She was devastated. Our wedding was suddenly clouded with tension, and I didn't know how to fix it. In the end, everything turned out okay. Jenna and I had a long heart-to-heart, and we worked through the mess I had created. Kelly didn't attend the wedding, and the day itself went off without a hitch. But it was a painful lesson for me about the importance of thinking things through, especially when it comes to people from your past. The moral of the story: always double-check your guest list and think carefully before trying to be the bigger person. It could cost you more than you realize. TIFU by accidentally sending my ex a love letter I wrote for my current girlfriend. I've made some terrible mistakes in my life, but this one might just take the cake. It all started a few weeks ago when I was feeling pretty good about my life. I've been dating my girlfriend for about 6 months, and we were really hitting it off. Things were going great, and I was thinking that maybe this could be the one. To make it even better, my ex, who I'd been with for almost 2 years before we broke up a year ago, had been out of the picture for a while. Our breakup was rough, but we had both moved on. At least, that's what I thought. One night, I was lying in bed, thinking about my girlfriend. She's amazing, smart, funny, incredibly beautiful, and she makes me feel like the best version of myself. I wanted to write her a letter, a really heartfelt one, to tell her how much she meant to me. So, I grabbed my laptop and began typing. It started off simple enough. Dear girlfriend's name, I know I don't say it enough, but I'm so lucky to have you in my life. Every day, I wake up and just feel grateful that you're mine. Your laugh is my favorite sound in the world, and the way you look at me makes me feel like the most important person in the room. I never thought I'd find someone who just gets me the way you do. You know, normal gushy love letter stuff. I pour my heart into it. I was just getting started, and I felt good about what I was writing. But then, I started thinking about the times when I had written letters to my ex. I had written her love letters when we were together, sometimes for birthdays, anniversaries, or just because I wanted to express how much I cared. Those letters always felt genuine at the time, but looking back, they felt a bit, well, cringy. Still, I felt like writing letters for my girlfriend would be a new and special thing. It wasn't like my ex was ever going to see them again, right? Now, here's where things got messy. I had been going through some old files on my laptop earlier that day, organizing things and deleting stuff I didn't need. In the process, I stumbled upon a folder labeled Old Love Letters. Inside, there were a few drafts I had written for my ex during our time together. Most of them were embarrassing, and I had forgotten they even existed. But there was one that I thought was particularly well written, one that I had never actually sent to her. I opened it up, and as I read through it, I couldn't help but feel a little nostalgic. There was a part of me that missed how passionate we were when we were in the thick of it. The letter was titled To the One I Love. I read through it. Ex's name. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I don't know if it's because of all the memories we've shared or because I've realized just how much you mean to me, but I wanted to take a moment to write down my feelings. You've shown me a love that I never thought was possible. Your heart is so full of kindness, and your soul is pure and radiant. I don't think I've ever truly thanked you for everything you've done for me. I can't wait to see where our future takes us because I know that, with you by my side, anything is possible. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't in love with her anymore. Not even close. But I had to admit, the letter was beautiful. It was the kind of thing you would frame and keep forever as a reminder of a past relationship, no matter how flawed it had been. I was feeling a bit nostalgic, and my thoughts wandered. I wondered how she was doing, how my ex was holding up. The truth was, she had broken up with me after we'd been together for so long, and while I was heartbroken at the time, I had since gotten over it. But still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about her sometimes. I got the idea to copy and paste part of that letter into my new one for my current girlfriend. I thought it would be a sweet and poetic way to show her how much she meant to me. I didn't think it would cause any harm. After all, I was still focused on my girlfriend, and the letter was just a few words from the past. I figured I could just make it fit. So I highlighted the best parts of the letter, copied them, and pasted them into the new love letter I was writing. I made sure to tweak a few words to fit my current relationship, but overall, it was more or less the same. I thought it was perfect, deep and romantic, a testament to how much I cared. Here's where things went wrong. I hit send, but I didn't send it to my girlfriend. I accidentally sent it to my ex. I know, it sounds unbelievable, but let me explain how it happened. I was so focused on the letter in the moment, and in a hurry to send it before I fell asleep, I clicked on my contacts without checking who was in the TIFU field. I assumed my girlfriend was the first contact in my list because she was the last person I'd texted. But instead, I had accidentally clicked on my ex's contact. The message went through, and I didn't realize until it was too late. The second I hit send, I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. I looked at my phone, and sure enough, there it was, the letter I had written, sent to the last person I ever wanted to see it. I immediately called my ex, but she didn't pick up. Panic set in. I called her again, and this time, she picked up. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice cheerful but a little confused. "Listen, I didn't mean to send you that text," I blurted out. "It was meant for someone else. I'm really sorry." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What text?" she asked, sounding genuinely perplexed. I felt like a fool. "The love letter. I just sent it to you by accident. It was meant for my girlfriend, not you." There was another pause. Then she laughed. "Oh my God, you're kidding. That's hilarious." "Seriously? I thought you were going to say something really serious." "You know what? I don't even know what to say." I could barely speak. "Please, just forget about it. I didn't mean it like that. I swear, I wasn't thinking about you in that way." She paused for a moment. "Well, I hope you have a great relationship with her. I'm glad you're happy. Just, next time, maybe double-check who you're sending stuff to." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, you're right. I totally messed up." After we hung up, I had to explain the situation to my girlfriend, who wasn't nearly as forgiving as my ex. She was understandably upset, and I spent the rest of the night groveling for forgiveness. Luckily, we're still together, and she laughed about it eventually, but not before making me swear I'd never make that kind of mistake again. In the end, I learned two things. First, always check who you're sending messages to, and second, always trust your gut. If you're writing something personal, don't let the ghosts of old relationships creep in. Moral of the story: be careful when playing with past loves, because sometimes they're not as far in the past as you think. TIFU by accidentally becoming the main character in a viral social media trend. So, this happened a few weeks ago, and honestly, I still can't believe it. I don't even know where to begin. I guess it all started with my impulse to try something new. You know, the typical, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone kind of moment. My friends and I were at a small local park, just hanging out when we saw a bunch of people laughing, dancing, and taking videos of each other. I thought it was one of those viral TikTok challenges, but I wasn't quite sure what was going on. One of my friends, Jenna, nudged me and said, "You should totally join them. You got some moves." Now, let me set the record straight. I am the least coordinated person I know. I can barely keep my balance on a sidewalk, let alone try to mimic some fast-paced, trend-worthy dance. But Jenna kept egging me on, and I thought, why not? It'll be funny. The group of people in the park was obviously having a great time, and most of them seemed to be in on some kind of choreographed routine. I'm not sure what came over me, but I decided to jump in. I have no rhythm, but I figured I'd follow along and maybe do something ridiculous to get a laugh. The dance was set to this upbeat song, some catchy tune I'd never heard of, and I tried my best to mimic the moves. Let's just say it didn't go well. My arms were flailing in the wrong direction, my feet stumbled over each other, and I nearly tripped over a bench. But for some reason, the people filming thought it was hilarious. They kept encouraging me, shouting "Go, go," and clapping along to the beat. I tried to save face, thinking this would be a one-time embarrassing moment, but little did I know I was being filmed the entire time. Fast forward to a couple of days later. I was just sitting on my couch, scrolling through Instagram, when I saw a notification that I'd been tagged in something. Curious, I clicked on the post. To my shock, It was a clip of me from that day in the park, clearly from the moment I decided to join the dance routine. But this wasn't just any video. It was being shared by one of the most popular viral dance accounts on the platform. The caption read, "When you try to join the trend, but end up creating a new one." I had no idea what that meant. So I kept scrolling and found the original post that my video had been taken from. And then it hit me. My awkward, out-of-sync attempt at dancing had somehow gone viral. People were now recreating my dance moves. I was suddenly the main character of a new viral trend, and I had no clue how it had happened. For the next few days, my phone kept buzzing. Messages from friends, family, and even strangers started flooding in. I got tagged in dozens of posts, many of which were people trying to recreate my dance. Some were worse than me. Honestly, that was kind of comforting, but others somehow made it look even more ridiculous. They were doing my moves with an exaggerated flair, and the whole thing was just blowing up. My dance had somehow become a challenge, and now everyone was tagging me in their attempts. At first, I thought it was funny. I mean, sure, I was mortified to see myself on social media, looking like I had no idea what I was doing. But the thought that I was inadvertently creating a new viral trend seemed kind of cool, maybe even a little empowering. I was a meme. That's something I never imagined. But then it started to get a little out of hand. The same video of me was being shared on every platform. Memes and remixes of my dance moves were popping up all over Twitter, Facebook, and even YouTube. People I didn't even know were sending me messages like, "You're a legend and can't stop watching your dance." I was starting to feel like a walking, talking viral sensation. Then came the brands. I swear, it was like every single company with an internet presence wanted a piece of the action. I got a direct message from a marketing agency offering me a paid opportunity to promote their product using my viral dance. They were offering me an amount of money I'd never dreamed of, and I almost couldn't believe it. I mean, I was literally just flailing my arms around, looking like a confused bird. But there they were offering me cash to keep doing it. I said yes. How could I not? It was all just too much for my brain to process. But then things took a turn. The challenge started spreading beyond social media. People started showing up at my local coffee shop and gym, trying to get me to recreate the dance with them. At first, I thought it was kind of cool, but then it got weird. I'd be walking down the street, and random people would stop me and say, "Hey, are you the flailing dancer?" I started getting recognized on the street, and it was both flattering and terrifying at the same time. I was no longer just a regular person. I was that person. The one who couldn't keep her arms straight in a simple dance. The one who had unknowingly become the face of a viral trend. And I didn't know how to handle it. Then came the ultimate cringe moment. Someone sent me a compilation of all the TikTok videos where people were trying to recreate my dance. There were hundreds of them. And among those clips was a video of me looking so out of place and ridiculous, looping on an endless, repeating cycle. It was like my face was everywhere. My movements, my awkward expressions, my disastrous attempts at choreography were being shared, laughed at, and parroted. I couldn't escape it. It felt like the internet was holding me hostage in this weird, uncomfortable version of fame that I never asked for. In the end, I tried to laugh it off. I kept saying to myself, it's just a silly trend. It'll pass. But the experience taught me a lot about the strange, uncontrollable nature of social media virality. How quickly you can go from being just another person to the center of attention for reasons you never intended. I'm still cringing every time I see my own face pop up in one of those videos. It's like my awkwardness will be immortalized online forever. But hey, at least I'm rich now. TIFU by trying to impress my date and accidentally sending a picture of my junk to her dad. So, this happened last weekend, and I'm still trying to piece together what went so terribly wrong. Let me preface this by saying I am not a smooth operator when it comes to dating or technology. But somehow, I thought I could play it cool and impress this girl I've been seeing for a few weeks. Spoiler alert, I ended up impressing her dad, but not in the way I had hoped. All right, so there's this girl, Lily. We've been talking for a while, and everything seemed to be going well. She's pretty, funny, smart, and easy to talk to. We have a lot in common, and things were progressing nicely. I had made the decision to ask her out on a proper date to a nice Italian restaurant. Dinner was fantastic, and we had a great time. We were both feeling the vibe, and I could tell that there was chemistry. We went back to her place afterward, where things got a bit more intimate. No, not like that, but we did end up making out on the couch. It was nothing too wild, but I could tell we were both into it. The whole night was going great, but here's where things went south. As we were sitting there, talking and joking around, I noticed that Lily had left her phone on the coffee table. As a joke, I picked it up and sent a text from her phone to mine, pretending to be her. The text just said, "You're the best kisser ever," followed by a heart emoji. A playful thing, right? I knew she'd find it funny, and we'd both laugh about it later. So, after that, I sent her a couple of selfies and some other silly photos. Nothing inappropriate, just goofing off. At this point, I felt like the night had been a success. I was feeling confident, and I thought, why not keep this momentum going? I decided to send Lily a sexy picture. Not a full-on nude, but, one of those pictures that's meant to be flirty, but not too forward. You can probably guess where this is going. I take the picture, check it over, and think, all right, this should do the trick. She'll love it. But in my rush to send it, I do something incredibly dumb. I don't realize that in my excitement, I've accidentally sent the photo to the wrong number. Instead of sending it to Lily, I've sent it to someone else entirely. Now, you're probably thinking, oh no, you sent it to the wrong person. Big deal. Well, here's where the nightmare really begins. I didn't just send it to some random number. No, I sent to her dad. I don't know how I didn't notice this. He was saved as dad in her contacts, and somehow I missed it entirely. I realize my mistake when I get a notification a few minutes later. It's a text from a number I mistakenly sent the photo to. I check it, and my heart literally drops into my stomach. It's a message from Lily's dad. The text simply reads, "Son, I think you sent this to the wrong person." I immediately panic. I can feel my face go white, and my palms start sweating. I can't even think straight. What do I do now? My brain is short-circuiting as I try to process the gravity of the situation. I'm not just some guy she's seeing. I just sent a half-nude picture of myself to the man who raised her. Her dad. The man who is probably in his mid-50s, probably old enough to be my father, and definitely old enough to be aware of how terrible this is. I try to play it cool for a split second, but my attempts are futile. I know I need to respond. I just don't know how. My mind is racing, thinking of all the potential consequences. Do I apologize? Do I pretend it wasn't me? Do I tell him I was just messing around and it was an accident? Nothing feels like it will fix this. I take a deep breath and decide the best course of action is to come clean. I text him back as quickly as I can. "Oh my God, I am so sorry. That was meant for Lily. I didn't mean for you to get that. Please, please don't tell her." A few minutes later, he responds, "It's all right, son. I'll just delete it. Don't worry about it. But just so you know, Lily's right behind me, and she's seen the picture." Time stops. I start to sweat again. This is the worst possible outcome. Not only has he seen the picture, but now Lily knows too. My brain is screaming at me to just crawl into a hole and never come out. What is happening? Why is this happening to me? I quickly check my phone, and I see that Lily has texted me. The message simply says, "What the actual hell?" I try to salvage the situation by sending her a message, explaining how embarrassed I am and that it was a huge accident. I tell her I was just trying to do something funny, and it completely backfired. But I know that this is beyond repair. The damage has been done. She responds with a string of crying emojis and a message. This is literally the worst thing you could have done. My dad is still laughing about it. You know what? I'm laughing too, but we're never going to talk about this again. We awkwardly go silent for a while, but eventually she calls me to talk about it. She admits she's a little embarrassed, but she's surprisingly not mad. She even says that her dad was kind of cool about it, though he did keep mentioning how he hadn't seen something like that in a long time. I'm not sure if that makes it worse or better. The rest of the night is awkward. I apologize a million times over, and eventually we end up laughing about it. But let me tell you, this is something I will never live down. Every time I text her now, I feel like her dad is watching from behind her shoulder, laughing to himself about my colossal failure. To this day, Lily and I are still seeing each other. We've both laughed about it a lot since, but I'll never forget the moment I sent my junk to her dad. It's a lesson learned. Always double-check the contact before sending anything, especially if it's a photo meant to impress someone. Anyway, I'll be sticking to normal selfies from now on, just to be safe. TIFU by accidentally sending my ex the wrong text message and reopening old wounds. I never thought I'd find myself back in touch with my ex. Not after everything that happened. But somehow, life has a funny way of pulling you back into places you never intended to be. This is the story of how I managed to completely mess up and make things infinitely more awkward than they needed to be. Let me set the stage. I've been single for about a year now. My ex and I had been together for nearly 3 years before breaking up. It was a pretty rough breakup, to be honest. We had our issues, and I can't say I wasn't part of the problem. We fought, had our good times, and eventually we just realized we were going different directions. It wasn't one big thing, but a series of small things that just built up over time. I won't get into all the details, but suffice it to say, I was pretty heartbroken when it ended, and I did my best to move on. Fast forward to a few months ago. I was going through old photos on my phone, scrolling through memories of happier times, and I found a photo of the two of us. It was from one of those rare moments where everything felt right. Laughing at some dumb inside joke at a carnival, her hair flying in the wind, and that carefree look we both shared before things went south. It hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. I missed her, not necessarily because I wanted to get back together, but because there were parts of that relationship I really cherished. I made the foolish decision to text her. I convinced myself that it wouldn't hurt anything. After all, it's been a year, and we'd both grown, right? So, I sent a simple message. Hey, I came across a picture of us today. It brought back some good memories. Hope you're doing well. I didn't expect a reply. In fact, I was prepared for the awkward silence that might follow. But to my surprise, she responded quickly. Hey, I didn't expect to hear from you. I'm doing well. I hope you are too. That seemed harmless enough. We exchanged a few more messages about life updates, each one carefully navigating around any mention of the past. The conversation felt light, almost like we were catching up with old friends. By the time we ended the exchange, I was left with this strange feeling. It felt good to talk to her again, but I wasn't sure if it was a good idea. I mean, we had ended things for a reason, right? I didn't reach out to her again for a while. Life continued as usual, and I kept busy with work and other things. But a few weeks later, I was at a bar with some friends, having a good time, and one of them mentioned a funny meme they saw online. I remembered that she and I used to share memes all the time when we were together. It was one of those silly things we'd always laugh about, and it kind of reminded me of her. So, being a little tipsy and not thinking clearly, I pulled out my phone and sent her the meme. I immediately realized what I'd done when the message went through. Why did I do that? It was random, unnecessary, and completely out of nowhere. I didn't even know if she still found those kinds of things funny. But at this point, it was too late to take it back. The meme was out there in the world. A few minutes passed, and I felt a wave of regret. I was about to put my phone down and forget about it when, to my surprise, she responded, "This is so dumb. Oh, I can't believe you still remember this." Now, at this point, I should have known better. I should have just let it be. But no, I got this sudden burst of confidence. I thought, okay, maybe we're actually in a good place now. Maybe things are different. So, I decided to go for it. I didn't want to seem like a total weirdo, but I couldn't help myself. I was feeling a bit nostalgic, and I thought, what harm could it do to send one more message? And that's when it happened. I sent a text that I can't even begin to explain. It wasn't something terrible, at least not on the surface, but it was far too personal and way too forward. Here's what I sent. I've been thinking about the time we went to that little cabin upstate, the one by the lake. That was honestly one of the happiest weekends of my life. I miss those moments. Immediately after hitting send, I froze. What had I just done? My heart sank. It was as if I had reopened the door to something I wasn't ready for. I felt an instant sense of dread. Why did I let myself say that? She was probably going to think I was trying to rekindle something, or worse, that I hadn't moved on. My stomach was in knots as I anxiously stared at my screen, waiting for her response. What felt like an eternity later, she replied with a single message. "I'm really glad you had those moments, but I don't think it's healthy for either of us to dwell on the past like that. We both moved on." It stung, not just because it was a clear indication that she was still very much over me, but because it was the truth. We had moved on, and that was exactly what I needed to do. I had no business reaching out to her like that. The relationship was over for a reason. That reason hadn't changed, and neither had my feelings of guilt for reopening that wound. I knew she was right, but the thing is, I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to believe that there was some magic solution, some cosmic alignment that would let us pick up where we left off. But there wasn't, and deep down I knew it. The relationship had been a chapter in our lives, and it was time to move on, completely. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was a much-needed reality check. I had crossed a line I shouldn't have, and in doing so, I had not only embarrassed myself, but also potentially hurt her by bringing up things she had clearly let go of. I didn't need to text her about old memories. I needed to let go too. So, I did what any person with a shred of dignity would do. I apologized for sending that last message, acknowledging that I should have kept the past where it belonged. I also assured her that I respected her boundaries and wouldn't reach out again. She thanked me for the apology, wished me well, and the conversation ended. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson. Nostalgia can be a powerful thing, but it's important to recognize when to let go of the past and stop trying to revive old flames. It's okay to remember the good moments, but it's not okay to hang on to them and force something that's no longer there. Now, every time I look at my phone, I cringe a little at the memory of that message. But I suppose that's part of the healing process, right? Getting through the awkwardness and knowing that sometimes the best way to move forward is to leave the past behind. TIFU by accidentally sending an embarrassing message to my boss that changed the course of my career. So this happened a few weeks ago, and it still haunts me. I've been working in a mid-level management position at a tech company for the past few years. It's been a decent job, and while my relationship with my boss has always been professional, I wouldn't say we're exactly friends. We get along fine, but there's always that formal barrier between us. It was a regular Monday morning, and I had just finished a meeting with my team. As usual, I was catching up on emails when I got a message from my boss. Let's call him Bob. Bob is a very straightforward guy, no nonsense, and doesn't engage in much small talk. The email was short and to the point. Can you send me the report on last quarter's performance metrics by the end of the day? Now, I know my job, so I immediately began working on pulling the necessary data. The report was a bit of a pain, but nothing I couldn't handle. I spent the next few hours in Excel, trying to make everything look presentable, checking every detail. By the time I had everything ready, it was just after 3 p.m. I was pretty satisfied with the report, so I attached it to an email and wrote a polite message. Hi, Bob. Please find a report on last quarter's performance metrics attached. Let me know if you need any further information. Best regards, my name. Then, before hitting send, I received a text from my friend Chris, who works in a completely different department. He had texted me about a funny incident that had happened earlier in the day at work. The text itself wasn't anything inappropriate, just a funny comment about an awkward conversation between two of our coworkers. I found it pretty hilarious and, in a lighthearted moment, decided to forward it to Bob as well, just for fun. Try to keep the mood light. So, I did what any sensible person would do. I copied and pasted the text from Chris into my email to Bob, right before I hit send. I added something like, haha, this made me laugh today, and thought it would add a personal touch to my otherwise very formal communication. I thought Bob might appreciate the humor, given how stuffy our work environment can sometimes be. Now, here's where things go horribly wrong. Instead of pasting Chris's text into the email body like I thought I had, I accidentally pasted it into the subject field of the email. But I didn't notice. At this point, I was tired and just ready to get the task off my plate. I hit send, feeling pretty proud of myself for both completing the report and adding a little personal touch to it. I had barely sat down when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my email app. I opened it, expecting to see the usual acknowledgement from Bob about the report. But instead, I saw an email from Bob with a one-word subject. What? Panic set in immediately. I opened the email, and my eyes went straight to the subject line. There it was in all its glory. Haha, this made me laugh today. The thing is, what Chris had sent me was a funny but slightly inappropriate joke about our HR department. It was nothing too crazy, but definitely not something you want to send to your boss. It had some colorful language and a very specific reference to a misunderstanding about a team-building activity HR had organized, which had ended up being a total disaster. I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. In my desperate attempt to add a personal touch to the email, I had accidentally sent a text with a joke about HR to my boss. And I wasn't even just sending it as a casual message. It was part of the official email that contained the performance report. I quickly opened the email I had sent to Bob to assess the damage. I saw the full email body and the attached report, but it was the subject line that was the issue. My stomach sank further when I realized that I hadn't just pasted the joke in the subject line. I had pasted the whole thing. The subject read, "Ha! This made me laugh today. Chris's hilarious joke about HR's disastrous team-building event." I could feel my face turning beet red. I quickly tried to think of something to do, but there was nothing. I couldn't unsend the email. I couldn't take it back. I immediately wrote an apology email, which I'm sure looked desperate and cringy. "Hi, Bob. I apologize for the subject line of the email I just sent. I was trying to share something funny with you, and I accidentally pasted the wrong text in the subject. Please disregard it. I just wanted to send the performance report. I hope the report is helpful, and again, I apologize for the confusion. I don't know why I thought this would help. In hindsight, it was probably worse to send an email apologizing for the error, drawing even more attention to the situation. But I did it anyway. The minutes that followed felt like hours. I kept staring at my inbox, waiting for Bob to respond. When a reply finally came, my heart skipped a beat. It was brief, but to the point. Noted. "Let me know if you need anything else." I almost passed out with relief. There was no mention of the joke, no scolding, no comment about the ridiculousness of it all. It was as if Bob had completely ignored the incident. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of complete mortification. I didn't know if he was silently judging me or if he was just trying to pretend it never happened. A few days later, I ran into Bob in the break room. He didn't bring up the email at all, and I didn't either. But as I stood there, I couldn't help but notice that every time he looked at me, he had this slight smile on his face. Maybe it was just my paranoia, but it felt like he knew something I didn't. Now, every time I send an email, I triple-check the subject line. And while Bob hasn't mentioned anything further, I'll never be able to forget the time I almost derailed my career with a poorly timed joke. TIFU by accidentally sending a text to my boss about quitting my job, and now I might be unemployed. So, this happened last week, and I still can't figure out how I managed to mess it up this badly. I'm writing this hoping that I can laugh about it one day, but right now it's all just kind of too real. I've been working in a mid-sized marketing firm for about 2 years now. I'm not particularly passionate about the job, but it pays the bills and I have some nice colleagues. The work environment is decent, not perfect, but manageable. Still, over the past couple of months, I've been thinking about leaving. There's been some drama in the office, a few poor decisions from management, and honestly, I just feel unappreciated. I've been daydreaming about quitting for a while, even started applying for new jobs, but nothing had come through yet. Anyway, here's where things went south. So, one morning last week, I was feeling extra frustrated. The project I was working on had gone off the rails due to some miscommunication between our team and a client, and my boss was giving me grief about it. She's the kind of boss who expects everything to be perfect, even though she has no real understanding of how the projects actually work. I had just spent hours cleaning up her mess, and instead of a thank you, all I got was a "this should have been done yesterday" look. In a fit of frustration, I did something I had never done before. I started venting about her in a group chat with some of my friends. Nothing major, just typical grumbling, nothing that I would ever want to go public or send to anyone involved with work. My friends know I complain about my job sometimes, so they're used to me venting. The text went something like this. "Ugh, I can't deal with this woman anymore. Seriously, I need to quit. She's always blaming me for everything. I'm done. I just need to get out of here before I lose my mind." Now, the thing is, I didn't actually plan to quit that day, and I had no intention of doing anything rash. It was just venting. But of course, what I didn't realize was that I was texting that message in the wrong chat. See, I have my friends group chat, and then there's my work group chat. For some reason, I've always kept them on my phone with the same contact name, Work Crew, so the conversation threads look very similar. I usually don't mix up the two, but I guess I wasn't paying enough attention. My phone was acting a little weird that morning, kind of laggy and slow, and instead of scrolling through the group chat with my friends, I thought I was in the work one. I thought I was sending a casual rant to my friends about my boss. But no, I accidentally sent a message to my actual work group chat, which, you guessed it, had my boss in it. For a moment, everything just froze. I stared at my phone in disbelief. There's no way that just happened. I quickly tried to delete the message, but you know how that works. The notification had already popped up on her screen, and there was no going back. Panic set in. My palms were sweaty, my heart was racing, and I couldn't breathe. I tried to salvage the situation by quickly sending another message, pretending like the "I need to quit" was just a joke or some random phrase that had nothing to do with the context. But it was too late. The damage had been done. My boss responded almost immediately, and here's how that went. "Boss, I think we need to have a conversation about this. Please come to my office as soon as you can." At this point, my stomach dropped, and I felt like I was about to pass out. I wasn't sure if I should go in and apologize or just start packing up my things because, let's face it, I had just dropped a nuclear bomb on my career. I debated calling in sick, but then I figured that would only make things worse. I walked into her office like a man sentenced to the gallows. She was sitting behind her desk, and I could tell she was trying her best to hold it together, though I could see the visible disappointment on her face. She didn't start with any pleasantries. She just got right to the point. "Boss, so you want to quit?" I froze. How could I respond to that? What was I supposed to say? I stammered, No, I didn't mean that. It was just, I was venting to my friends. It's not what it looks like. I didn't mean to send it here." She looked at me with that knowing look that bosses give when they're trying to be professional, but are also kind of disappointed in you. "I understand, but this is a serious matter. If you really feel this way, we can talk about it. I can't have employees who are this unhappy. And if you're considering leaving, I'd like to know." The thing is, I wasn't actually considering quitting. Not really. It was a moment of frustration, and honestly, I was just blowing off steam. But here I was, trying to explain this to her without sounding like a complete idiot. I started babbling, trying to explain myself. I apologized repeatedly and told her it was just a joke, how I didn't mean it, and how I had been having a tough time with the current project. I also tried to assure her that I didn't want to leave the company, but the truth was I probably did want to leave, just not that moment, and certainly not in a way that would look like I was having a mental breakdown. Her expression softened, but she didn't let me off the hook. She said, "I appreciate the apology, but we need to have a conversation about your future here. This can't be brushed off as a simple mistake. It's clear that you're not happy, and I think it's time for us to talk about what's next." At that point, I had no idea what to say. She asked if I'd been considering other job opportunities, and I admitted that I had been looking around. She was surprisingly calm about it, but I could tell she wasn't happy. The conversation lasted for about 30 minutes, and when I left her office, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But I also knew I had messed up. I might still have a job, but I had definitely damaged my reputation. The rest of the day was awkward, and I kept getting side-eye glances from my coworkers, some of whom I knew had seen the message. I tried to act normal, but my face was probably beet red the entire time. Since then, things have been weird. My boss hasn't brought up the situation again, but she did offer me a little more responsibility on my next project. She said, "I trust you can handle it," which, to be honest, didn't feel reassuring at all. It felt more like she was testing me to see if I would snap again. At this point, I'm not sure what will happen. I'm trying my best to fix things, and I've been extra professional since that day. But part of me is still scared that the next time we have a meeting, she'll fire me on the spot. I keep checking my phone like it's a ticking time bomb, and I feel like I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. So, yeah, TIFU by sending a text about quitting my job to my boss, and now I'm on thin ice at work. Here's hoping I don't screw up any worse. TIFU by getting a random phone call that changed my life forever. So this happened a few days ago, and I'm still trying to process everything. I'm honestly not sure where to even start, but here goes. It all started when I got an unexpected phone call. I'm one of those people who typically ignores numbers I don't recognize, but for some reason, I decided to pick it up this time. I had no idea how much that decision would end up impacting me. I looked at the screen. The area code was unfamiliar, but I thought it might be something work-related. I didn't want to risk it being important, so I answered. The voice on the other end sounded professional, almost too professional. Hello, is this my full name? I hesitated for a moment. I mean, who even calls you like that anymore? I thought about hanging up, but I was already in too deep. Yes, this is my name, I replied, trying to sound calm. Great. My name is a name I didn't recognize, and I'm calling from a name I didn't recognize about an issue with your account, the voice said. I immediately felt a little uneasy, but it didn't seem like a scam yet, so I stayed on the line. Okay, what's going on? I asked, already wondering if this was going to be one of those annoying customer service calls. The person on the other end started going through a bunch of details that didn't make much sense to me at first. They mentioned an account I had never heard of, but they had all my personal information, like my full name, address, and even the last 4 digits of my social security number. The more they said, the more I felt like I was being pulled into something that I didn't understand. Is this about something I signed up for? I asked, still feeling skeptical. Not exactly. There seems to be an issue with a loan under your name, the person said, almost too casually. My heart skipped a beat. I don't have any loans. At least, I didn't think I did. What kind of loan are you talking about? I don't have any loans, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The person on the other end remained calm, which only made me more nervous. They told me that there was a loan taken out under my name about 6 months ago for a significant amount of money. They mentioned the loan was for something called business expansion, but couldn't give me much more information than that. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Why would someone take out a loan in my name? I wasn't running any business, let alone expanding one. I think you have the wrong person, I said, hoping this would all be some kind of mistake. The person seemed to acknowledge my confusion, but assured me that it was a legitimate loan and that they needed to verify some information to proceed. I asked for more details, and that's when things took a turn. They asked me for my full address to confirm that the loan had been issued to the correct location. I froze. I knew my address, but the idea of giving it out to someone who might have already had access to my personal information felt completely wrong. Can you give me a bit more information about this loan first? I asked. I was starting to feel suspicious, and I wasn't ready to hand over anything else until I understood what was going on. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then the person spoke again, but this time their tone was different, more intense even. Listen, they said, I can either help you get this resolved right now, or we can escalate it. But if you don't cooperate, I'll have no choice but to file a report, and you'll be facing legal consequences. I would really prefer if you didn't take this to that point. This is where I completely lost it. I started to panic, realizing that this wasn't just some telemarketer or scammer. It felt real. Way too real. My mind was racing as I tried to figure out how this could even happen. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, trying not to sound desperate. I didn't take out any loans. You have to be mistaken. I need to speak to someone else. I was getting ready to hang up when the person on the other end said something that made my stomach drop. We've already contacted the authorities. They'll be here soon to assist you, but I would still recommend resolving this before it escalates. The call ended abruptly. At that moment, I completely freaked out. I didn't know what was going on or why my name was tied to a loan I didn't take out, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. I called my bank, I called my credit card companies, I checked every online account I could think of, all to make sure no one had actually gotten their hand on my identity. But then, as I was sitting there trying to think of what to do next, my phone buzzed again. It was the same number. I hesitated, but picked up. Hello, I said, my voice shaking. Hi, this is same name as before from the company name. Sorry to call you again, but I just wanted to let you know that the loan has already been resolved. It was a mistake in our system. There was a clerical error, and your account was incorrectly flagged. We've removed the issue, and you don't need to worry about anything. I was stunned. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or just hang up and never think about it again. I thanked the person as calmly as I could and hung up, completely rattled. I spent the rest of the evening researching how this could happen, and I couldn't find anything that made sense. There's no way to completely prevent identity theft, and I learned that some of these scammers know way more about you than they should. The scariest part was how close I was to giving out more personal details, which could have made things so much worse. But in the end, it was just an error on their part, and somehow I dodged a bullet. I'll be watching my accounts like a hawk from now on, though. In hindsight, I should have trusted my instincts and hung up the moment things didn't feel right. I might have been lucky this time, but I'll never let my guard down again. So yeah, TIFU by almost falling for a scam that would have ruined my life. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.